Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, joined as always by Joe Resinello. Once more, dear friends, let us go into the breach. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, joined as always by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear friends, on this Sunday night, Facebook Live at 8 o'clock, January 5th, we are going into the breach. Now, I have to say that I am completely at the mercy of Joe, because this is going to be, on my part anyway, it's going to be a purely improvisational conversation. I know a little bit about what we're going to talk about, but Joe wanted to pick a few articles and issues that are going on this week for us to get our hands dirty here at the front line a little bit. So we want to welcome all of you back, and we want to tell you, as we always do from our hearts, that we appreciate your support, your viewership, your sharing our videos with your friends, and telling people about us. We've gained many followers on YouTube, on Facebook, and we're rocking and rolling, and we're only going up. And why, as always? Because we're telling the truth. Having said that, I hand it over to my brother.
Okay, and also shout out to the folks at Crusade Channel. We will be doing a show on the 21st. We're sitting in for Richard Barrett on the Barrett Brief. Crusade is out of the New Orleans metropolitan area, and we're also going to be on that show, the Barrett Brief, on the 30th of this month. So you can call in. I will post that information on Facebook as well as on Twitter. You can call in and be a part of our conversation. Also, a shout out to Holy Faith Media, Jonathan Ross up in Canada. He produces all our content. He does a great job. We recently did an interview with Father Donald Calloway.
Donald Calloway, yep.
Great interview on a book that he just released from St. Joseph, and we have some other interviews lined up. Keep an eye out for them. They will be very, very good, I promise you. And as they happen, we'll let you know.
Yeah, and just so you know, all the interviews that we're looking for those people out there who who are on the front line, whether they be priests, whether they be laymen, it doesn't matter. If they're on the front line and speaking the truth, you know, in a lot of different areas, of course, then we're going to ask them to be on the show, whether it be in education, whether it be in the culture, in the case of Father Calloway, the spiritual battle. So yeah, stay tuned for those. We'll always give you a heads up on when those things are going to be coming at you. And before we go to Joe, quick shout out. Arvin's with us and says, greetings, gentlemen. A blessed epiphany to the both of you.
There it is.
A blessed epiphany to you are, brother. So let's rock and roll. Where are we headed?
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about the Christian genocide that's going on year after year. Sadly, it's not discussed in the mainstream media. Shocking. Year after year, Christians are being massacred. They're being massacred across the globe. Here, there is Christian persecution, let's be real. If you live your faith in the public square, you will be persecuted. You might not be killed. But across the globe, Christians are being massacred at the hands of radical Muslims. Yes, radicalized Muslims are slaughtering Christians year after year after year. And we want to talk about this because, again, it's not covered. We're going to lay out what has happened, particularly in Nigeria. It's a country of 200 million people. It's basically divided north and south, similar to the Sudan, Christians and Muslims. And as to quote the words of one archbishop from Nigeria, Christians are being murdered like, they're being slaughtered like chickens. This is how he phrased it. So we're going to talk specifically about Nigeria. We're going to put some facts out there. We're going to have our discussion, and please feel free to comment. Basically, over the Christmas holiday, there was a massacre. 11 Christians, their necks were slashed in Nigeria. Basically, what happened was, here's something that the Wall Street Journal recently posted. They said, the new war against African Christians. This is how the article begins. A slow-motion war is underway in Africa's most populous country. It is a massacre of Christians, the scale of which is horrific and brutal, and the world has hardly noticed. News coverage, other than Wall Street Journal, ABC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, don't find the genocide important at all, and they are choosing to ignore it. On December 28th, was the New York Times. This is how they headlined this particular incident where 11 Christians, their neck was slashed. They ran an article. It said, affiliate of ISIS in Nigeria releases video of executions. 11 were executed in revenge for Americans taking the ISIS leader's life, Abdul Barak al-Baghdadi.
Mm-hmm.
The Times would not put the word Christian in the headline. How serious did they take this? This was in section 8A of the paper.
Yeah.
In March, from February 9th to March in 2019, in Nigeria alone, 120 to 280 Christians were slaughtered by Islamic militants. ABC, CBS, NBC offered nothing. All they talk about is Trump, morning, noon, and night.
It's all Trump.
Why? Because they hate him. Why? Because they're feeding their base. Why? Because it's ratings. As far as the genocide, these are the pro-human rights elites.
Right.
They could care less.
Pro-human rights, but they don't bat an eyelash when it comes to overlooking the persecution of Christians, because as much as they hate Donald Trump, these same people, I don't care, and you could say I don't know what's in their heart, they hate Christianity. Ergo, they hate Christians. Or at least it's not important for them to report on the slaughter of Christians. If a Muslim gets a hangnail, somehow they'll find a way to blame a Christian for it. But this is Muslims killing, slaughtering these people, and not as Joe said, not a word. It doesn't even deserve a word. New York Times, substitute the word Christian for Jew or Muslim, and see if it ends up on page A8 as opposed to the front page of the paper that boasts that they only print all the news that's fit to print. See, the persecution of Christians doesn't fall under the umbrella of all the news that's fit to print, because they're an anti-Christian organization. Same with the rest of them. You think Jeff Zucker at CNN cares about the slaughter of Christians in Africa and Nigeria? The rape of women? I thought that's all we're supposed to worry about in this country is women's rights. What about the rights of these Christian women in Africa who are raped, then killed? Not a word.
And that's just Nigeria. How about Sudan? How about Yemen? How about Pakistan?
Sudan's been going
How
on
about
for years.
Iran? You see, this is another thing which they don't talk about. This is Muslim violence. This is not any other violence. It's radicalized Muslim violence on Christian. And this is what I want to put out there. And this is what I have said. Listen, Islam says they're the religion of peace. Okay? You're the religion of peace. There is a segment of the population within the 1.8 billion Muslims worldwide that is radicalized. This is factual. Law enforcement, this is their statistics. I didn't come up with it. This is law enforcement in America. They say 10 to 15% of Muslims are radicalized. How they came up with that, I don't know. All I could say is this: it's more than 1%. It's more than 1%, and it's not isolated. This is one country. I just rattled off 5 countries where Muslims are killing Christians. In the Quran, there are 164 verses of violence to be perpetrated against non-Muslims. 164 verses in the Quran. Now, if it's more than, say, 1%, and if it's between 1 and, say, 15%, whatever it is, that is a lot of people.
Tens of millions of people
that are for or actively working towards murdering non-Muslims. Now, this does not make me a hater. This makes me a person who's just telling you as it is. This is what's going on in countries. Now, why don't they talk about Nigeria? Why don't they talk about Sudan? Because they don't care.
That's right, they don't care.
They don't care because they're poor countries. They don't care. Right. These people, it's a genocide. People are getting slaughtered.
It's all you remember something. You can't use that word genocide. Genocide doesn't apply to Christians.
Reserved.
Christians do commit the genocidal acts. Christians, there's no genocide committed against Christians. according to their warped, twisted worldview. And think about it this way too, as far as the numbers are concerned. If these people lived in predominantly Muslim countries, then they could be isolated. And they are our enemy, okay? Radicalized Muslims, these people who wake up every day with jihad on the mind and on the brain, okay? They are our enemies. They're the enemies of civilization, okay? If they were isolated is one thing, but what do all these human rights, everybody's got human rights, human rights, human rights. What do they allow all these radicalized people to do? They let them flow right across the border into Europe. Europe is a mess because of Muslim immigration. Now, like you said, let's say 1 million people at one given time immigrate to Europe, okay? And let's say it's 10% are radicalized. That's 100,000 people. Do you know there's portions of Paris that the police cannot go into? Basically, they're enclaves, Muslim enclaves, that even the cops don't go in there. England has the same setup, Scandinavia. The Muslims are all over the place, and nobody says a word because it's so politically incorrect. They've already committed crimes, okay? I mean, that has been in the paper, like, you know, because if you look at, like you said, when a crime occurs in England, I guess it gets reported, but the same crime committed by a radicalized Muslim against a Christian in Nigeria doesn't really rate any,
well, it doesn't count.
Any news coverage doesn't count. But they've committed crimes. It's all documented. You're getting a reaction now in Europe. And then what's the response of the press? Let's say Poland and Hungary. They're starting to say, put the brakes on immigration. Say, listen, this is a problem for you guys over there in the European Union. We're putting the brakes on immigration for a while until we can get a handle on this. What happens to them? They're called autocratic. They're called intolerant. They're called haters. They see the mess and they say, before that comes here, we're going to do something about it.
I would say, where is the Black Lives Matter voice? Nigerians, last I checked, were black. They're getting slaughtered.
Right.
In the Sudan, they're being slaughtered. Where's the voice for women? They're being slaughtered. And here's another thing which I want to point out. You know, as Christians, and there are one-offs, there are Christians that do bad things. There always has been, there always will be. But we are not for murder. And when murders do, like say someone goes into an abortion clinic and kills people, immediately the bishop speaks out against it. What I want to bring up is this: the answer to these radicalized Islamic terrorists, and that's just what this group of individuals are that are slaughtering Nigerians, they are slaughtering people in the Sudan, the innocents. Immediately, if a Christian is to do that, they're condemned. Where is the voice of the Muslim? You see, there lies the answer to this problem. Because say, I'm going to throw a percentage, 6% of the 1.8 billion Muslims are radicalized in the world. Where is the voice of the people who are basically saying, that's wrong? I don't hear it. Now, are they indifferent to it? I don't know. Because if you are against it, you would speak out.
You would speak out against it.
And we're not hearing that. You go to countries like Pakistan, you're stoned. Go to Saudi Arabia. They don't even permit a Christian church, never mind the Catholic Church, an evangelical church, a Protestant church. They're illegal. Is this a religion of tolerance? You see, God does not force himself on you. God proposes. He doesn't impose. These countries, not only are they intolerant, but they are killing people, and they're killing Christians, and the world could care less.
Well,
the New York Times could care less.
Well, people are starting to wake up a little bit. People are starting to open their mouth. Obviously, not in the mainstream media, certainly on social media. Okay, I will give Fox News credit to this extent, is that they cover these things. People like Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, who we took down a couple weeks ago. We love you, Sean, but he'll point it out. But outside of that, too much of a political hot potato. Nobody wants to touch it. Don't say anything about Muslims. In the meantime, it's always the same argument. But it's not all Muslims. Joe just made the best point. You don't have to be committing the crimes to be a bad guy. You could be indifferent to the crimes. And like Joe said, We always point out on this show, there's a procession that goes in front of Old St. Patrick's Cathedral down the Planned Parenthood the first Saturday of every month. Our friends were there yesterday. Joe Campo and others were there praying, okay? If somebody went in there with a knife and grabbed the abortionist and stuck it in his eye and killed him, okay, you know what? We are going to very, very vocally and forcefully condemn that action and demand that that person be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. And the church would have something to say about it. See, that's not being indifferent. That's saying, look, we know that this is an atrocity and that goes on in the Planned Parenthood. This is not how we operate, and we would say something about it. Where is the big swath of all the tolerant Muslims that we're always told about? And we say, oh, but they're all peace-loving people. Then you have to start opening your mouth. You need to start organizing against those who, to use a phrase, hijack your religion, assuming your religion is a religion of peace. Well, then these men have hijacked your religion, and women too. They've hijacked your religion, and you have to say something about it. But they don't say anything about it. They don't, oh, that happens over there. What do you think? They don't act like Americans sometimes? Oh, that happens over there. I'm down here in Southern Africa. I'm not over by Nigeria. So I'm not, that's not my problem. Okay? That's exactly
Where's
the mentality.
The UN?
Oh, the UN.
Oh, please.
They're a
Waste
joke.
of time.
If Israel does something wrong, and we're not the biggest defenders of Israel, but if Israel does anything, they're condemned by the United Nations. Okay? You could, whenever any country tries to enact pro-life legislation or prevent pro-abortion legislation from becoming law, the UN comes down on them, and those are obviously, let's face it, Christian nations.
If you throw a plastic bottle in the ocean, they'll cut your hands off.
Right.
But meanwhile, Nigeria, women and children are being slaughtered year after year by radicalized Islam.
Right.
And that's just what it is. And they don't care.
They don't care.
And it goes on and on. In Egypt, blowing up churches. Sri Lanka, on Easter, churches blowing up. Once again, it's not Timothy McVeigh. That's always the excuse. It's, oh, it's the crazy white guy. No, it's not.
No, Boko Haram, there's not a white guy among them. Not one.
And it's not just African Muslims. Like I said, it happens in Sri Lanka. It happns in Pakistan. It happens in Southern Asia, Southeast Asia. It's going on globally. Christians are by far the most persecuted religion on the globe.
Well, see, that's
year after year. Look up the statistics. How many people were murdered or martyred in 2019? Your head would blow off its neck. You cannot be a Christian in the Holy Land anymore. You cannot. See what happens to Christians in Iraq. See what happens to them. They're being slaughtered, and no one cares.
Right.
Zero.
But doesn't it bother you? See, this is one part of this whole sad story that really, really bothers us. Okay, is that we're constantly being told that we need anti-this legislation. So now the current rage is we need legislation against anti-Semitism, which nobody really even knows what that means. If you mean that a person shouldn't go into a synagogue and shoot people, then I'm for that. Okay. But it's always, they're very eclectic. So they pick and choose the groups that they want to protect. So they want anti-hate crime legislation when it comes to the Jews.
And so do we.
And so do we. So, but again, depending on who's going to define what anti-Semitism is, because I don't trust the ADL to do that.
Well, you can't. You see, it's one thing with regard to that subject. We don't want to hurt anybody, but if you have a criticism of something,
then you should be able to say it.
You should say it.
All right.
Just like you could criticize me.
Right, you can criticize me. We have a com box here. Anybody wants to chime in? Okay, I know PM just chimed in. He's a Muslim. Okay, I know him very well. So the bottom line is, anybody wants to comment, they can comment. But my point is the hypocrisy. The UN, all right, and the global elites, what they want to do is they want to determine who the protected groups are and who are not protected groups. And needless to say, in this segment, you could gather from everything that Joe's pointing out, Christians are not in a protected group. So if you want us to respect what it is you're saying on a global scale, or respect what the UN's saying, which is a difficult, Herculean task, is to trust anything that comes out of the United Nations, then Christians and Christian groups, some of whom we don't agree with, because they might not be in the Catholic Church, but nonetheless, they are self-identified as Christian groups. They need to be protected also. That means, Mr. and Mrs. UN global elite oligarch, okay, that when Boko Haram wants to incite anti-Christian violence in the Sudan,
No, that would be Nigeria.
Nigeria, excuse me, thank you, Joe, then you have to have something to say about that, forcefully, but you don't. And my point in this whole rant was your hypocrisy. You are all a bunch of hypocrites because you want to protect that group and that group and that group, but you won't protect all groups.
And the answer to this is in the Muslim community. The answer to this is a unified voice in the Muslim community speaking out against violence of any kind, and pretending like it isn't violence is not addressing the problem, because there is violence coming out of it, and it's not isolated in many countries. Again, I rattled off 5. And there is a genocide going on, and I don't hear the voice that's saying that this is wrong. I don't hear it. And until that voice is shouted from the rooftops, it will go on. Until the media actually covers it or even cares, it will go on. And that's the real deal.
And it's sad. So where are we going next?
We're going to Joey Biden. This is a classic. I saw this week. I felt like I had to share it. Joe Biden was addressing our coal miner friends in West Virginia. He basically said displaced coal miners should take up coding and computer programming during his campaign swing through New Hampshire. Let me give you the exact quote. It's a gem. He basically says,
Hold. First of all, let's give a quick shout out. Arvin, Eddie, Vinny, Sue, Rita, Aldo, PM's joining us. Frontline with Joe and Joe, 8 o'clock Sunday nights on Facebook Live. And hopefully what you ate was a while ago, so it's not going to come flying out as we speak tonight about Uncle Joe Biden.
Joey, this is what he says. He says, anybody who could go down 3,000 feet in a coal mine can sure as hell learn to program as well. Biden told an audience in Derry, New Hampshire. Anybody who can throw coal into a furnace can learn how to program, for God's sake.
Now, they want to say that Trump is not qualified to be president of the United States. I don't know. I seem to think that Uncle Joe just kind of disqualified himself.
There's a couple things. Then I'm going to get into facts, because that's what I do and Joe does. We talk about facts. Okay. 1, I work at a bank. Who programs at my bank? Indian, Russian, and Israeli engineers. That's who codes at my bank. It's on floor 21. I have to go there every Thursday morning at 9:30 for a meeting. When I go there, I feel like I'm a Neanderthal.
Right.
The brain power that's coming out of the floor, it actually
out of the walls.
It throbs. It scares me, actually. I have to go there and sit down for an hour. Okay, that's number 1. Number 2, you're going to tell Ricky Bobby from the hills of Kentucky, who's been in a mine since he's 17. He's now 41. He's got dirt under his nails since 1999, that he's going to go now and leave his job that he's been doing for 2 decades plus and work on a computer. That is hysterical.
I would love to be a fly on the wall in a private room where Uncle Joe goes into a room full of Ricky Bobbies, okay? And his cousins, okay, and his in-laws, all right, all of whom have dirt under the fingernails, including his sister, okay, because she's probably in the coal mine too. They say, "Are you crazy? Are you nuts? You want me to mess with computers? Get out of here and go. Just get out of my." Come on, seriously. It's like these guys working in the coal. Can you imagine, like, the old Italian guy comes out? What are you talking about? I gotta go to the coal mine. You want me to come out? Or you want me to work on the computer? Hey, just do me a favor. Help with my union.
Yeah.
You know.
It's out of control.
It's up our fetched, because a lot of Italians, just as a quick digression, a lot of Italians when during the wave of immigration went down to West Virginia and Kentucky to work in the mines. So when I say Uncle Giuseppe, I mean, like, seriously, you got like the 3rd generation of Italians, Angelo, he was working in a mine. He's going to look at Uncle Joe and say, "What are you, nuts?"
Well, let's get into some some facts. First of all, I'm going to give you, this is my opinion. Of all the people running for president, probably the most trustworthy person in terms of, I don't agree with them, but who is a true believer is probably Bernie Sanders. He truly believes in socialism. And frankly, I don't think he lies. He believes in what he says. I disagree with him. I'm not voting for Bernie Sanders. The biggest liar out there, it's not Donald Trump. It is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is a stone cold liar. He is a stone-faced liar. He will lie to you because he's 5 decades. He is the swamp. Now, let me just throw some facts at you. A coal miner, his contract negotiated under the United Mine Workers Union, American Union, he makes $61,650 a year. With overtime, he makes close to $85,000. That's excluding pension, that's excluding benefits. Okay, this is a fact. Jobs that are basically when you are retrained, generally you are paid less. It's factual. Any person that usually retrains from a position, you are paid less. This was something that went on during the Obama administration. I'm going to read this to you. A study measuring the impact of retraining programs, both existing ones and those began under the Obama administration, found that while they helped enrollees find work faster, there is little proof that such programs led individuals to jobs of equal or higher wage to those they lost. This is a fact. Now, is Joe Biden talking about coding? No. He's talking about data entry, most likely. Now, this person makes, say they're aggressive and they work hard, they make the overtime, they do $85,000 a year in West Virginia. What data entry jobs are in West Virginia? That means you're moving. Where are you going to move to Menlo Park, California, outside of San Francisco, get a data entry job making $30,000 a year and think you're going to live?
You know what you could do with $30,000 a year in Menlo Park, California?
You live in a box.
Nothing.
You live in a tent.
You know what you could do with $85,000 a year in West Virginia or Kentucky? You could build your family. Let's call it the way it is. We live around here, okay, where to rent an apartment in a decent area is upwards of $2,000. Okay, that's if you have a decent apartment. That's a mortgage that you're paying for an apartment. Homes are $400,000 and $500,000 for a modest home. Essex County, Bergen County, Southern Bergen County, Morris County, and that's a little on the cheap side. So you know what you do with $85,000 around here? Live paycheck to paycheck, get a side job, and your wife goes out to work. You know what you get for 85 grand in West Virginia? You get all the things you need in your life: food, shelter, clothing, car, all of it. All right, at a much lower price and money to save for your family.
And this is
to build for your family.
And he's basically campaigning. Basically, they're out of luck. Joe Biden becomes the president. Coal mining, you're done.
Did you hear his tone, by the way? I'm not big on tone because I know that I guess I'm an angry white man according to the liberal mainstream media, okay? Let's just say that they're partially right. I'm an angry man, okay? But did you catch his tone? His tone was so dismissive. I forgot his exact words, but it was kind of like, come on, man. Come on, man, what?
Well,
listen, Mike, I can't get on the board of Burisma. I can't make $80,000 a month. Vice President Biden, my job is to take coal out of the ground or go into the steel mill or go to the auto plant or go build airplanes or any heavy manufacturing in a part of the country where 85 grand is enough money to do a lot of things with. So what do you mean, oh, come on, just get over it and start punching data into a computer? I don't want your $27,000 a year job. Get the hell out of my way. You and the radical extremists in the global and in the climate change hoax movement, like AOC, who we're going to get to, okay? You people get out of my life. Stay away from my job. That's what Ricky Bobby and Uncle Giuseppe would tell Joe Biden. Get out of the way. Don't tell me, oh, come on, it's easy to transition. Like Joe said, you go from making this to this.
And this is also, and I want to just address a comment in a moment, but this is where Obama was also a liar, and I'm going to tell you how. He would say, the unemployment rate is X under my regime. It may have been, but people were underemployed. I'm going to give you a perfect example, and this is a person that Obama should have had on his side. I know a gentleman, he's a little bit slow, he works at Today's Man. He was making under $11 an hour. I know this guy, during the Obama administration, all 8 years, they would not give him 40 hours a week, because if you worked 40 hours a week, they had to give him benefits. And under Obamacare, companies are not dumb. They kept you under $28 an hour, 28 hours a week,
yep,
at $11 an hour. The minute Trump was elected, this gentleman got $40 an hour and got benefits. See, that was the lie of that guy should have benefited under Obama. That's the guy Obama's supposed to represent. Well, guess what, Mr. Obama? He was underemployed. Guess what? They wouldn't even give him 40 hours a week. Under Donald Trump, he gets 40 hours a week. Under Donald Trump, he gets benefits. You see, that's the lie. Their economic model is a lie. Now I want to address a comment. I know, PM, that you're Muslim. You say the so-called radicalized Muslims. Sorry, my friend, there are radicalized Muslims in this world. Go to Nigeria, go to the Sudan, go to Pakistan, go to Yemen, go to Egypt. That's a fact. That's number one. Number two, I want to start hearing from the Muslim population an outcry. I don't hear it. That's number two. Number three, I know a little bit about Islamic faith. Okay, number one, there's two periods in Muhammad's life. There is the Mecca period and the Medina period. During the Mecca period, he wrote a lot of peaceful verses, which is in the Quran. During the Medina period, Muhammad was a warlord. Muhammad was a warlord. And 164 verses in the Quran were written during that period. The majority of them are violent towards non-Muslims. So, are there verses in the Quran that are peaceful? Absolutely. Are there Muslims who are peaceful? Absolutely. But there are radicalized Muslims in this world, my friend, and they are slaughtering Christians in countries, many of them are in Africa, black on black crime, slaughtering them like chickens. And they are radicalized, and they are violent, and they are not tolerant. Pakistan is another country that contains that group of people. So I am not so calling nothing. I'm speaking factually.
I want to say something to PM on this subject real quick. PM, understand something, okay? We as Roman Catholic men, there's a lot of people who self-identify as Catholic. I'm not the type of person. I don't want to be the type of person. I will point out the errors of, let's say, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi. You've heard it on the show because you've been following us.
And Joe Biden's Catholic,
right?
and I will criticize him up and down the line.
I don't ever say he's not Catholic. He's a baptized Catholic. So is Nancy Pelosi. I don't ever want to call somebody or say to somebody, you're not a real Catholic. I don't know what's in your heart, okay? What I do, though, is vocally criticize them as Catholics. I don't have to say that they're not Catholics, okay? In the same way, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because you say we should be calling them radicalized extremists and drop the word Muslim. No, it's for you as a peaceful and loving man, and again, I know you as a family man and a good man, okay? It's for you and others like you to raise your voices in the Muslim community.
Because they're killing in the name of Allah. Correct.
But I want to make it clear, because Joe and I practice what we preach when I say that to you, because we are highly critical of not only other Catholics, but of the Catholic hierarchy. But I will not tell them you can't call yourself Catholic. We will say is we have a hard time understanding how you could call yourself Catholic, and there is a difference. So we want to make it clear. We're not dropping the word radicalized Muslim because we don't feel it's like for us to do. They self-identify as Muslim. But I would encourage you to do what we do as Catholics, to raise your voice in the Muslim community, so that when those who want to, let's say, condone or even incite violence, you drop the hammer on them and say, no, that is not the way, and make your voices known. But I'm sorry, my friend, that's an internal problem to the Muslim community. We have our problems in the Catholic world. You have your problems. You have to deal with them the way we have to deal with ours. So I don't think it's appropriate for us to drop the word Muslim. They self-identify as Muslim. They are radicalized. I will agree with you, but I think it's appropriate to keep the word Muslim.
Okay, we're going to go to the crazy left, as we always do. We have 3 segments on that, and I wanted to share some of these ideas that came out during this week. I think they're very interesting. The first one came out saying that they want to abolish the police. You may think this is a fringe idea, but I'm going to tell you from the circles that this came from. Abolishing the police totally. Okay, from the streets of Chicago to the city council of Seattle, in the pages of academic journals ranging from Cardozo Law Review to Harvard Law Review, and mainstream publications from the Boston Review to Rolling Stone, advocates and activists are building a case not to reform policing, which they view as oppressive, violent, and racist in terms of its nature, but to do away with it altogether. They want to do away with the police. I don't want. Let me tell you, I don't want to live in that town.
Where do you begin with? See, here, one of the dilemmas. Joe and I are a couple of big mouth jamokes from North Jersey. My tongue's tied because I don't know where to begin with this argument. No, now they are saying they don't want police. Okay, so if I see somebody who's obviously a member of Antifa walking down the street with the black mask on, and I see them with a can of pepper spray in their hand, if I go up to them and punch them right in their face, and continue to pummel their face and kick their face against the wall, okay, so they never perpetrate violence against anybody again, are they saying I shouldn't be arrested? There shouldn't be a cop there to help them? Are they saying that? Because that's what lawlessness leads to. We are not a moral society, okay? Human beings are not perfectible. And the bottom line is, you will always need, I said we're not a moral society. I mean it that way. There are immoral people in society. There are criminals in society. And you need cops there to enforce the law. So when the criminals want to perpetrate crimes, the cops are there to stop them, okay? Or arrest them if they have committed a crime. So what this leads to, I did hear, not pertaining to this story in particular, what you have to try to read a little bit more into what they're saying. They want to abolish, I think, what they really are after is abolishing individual and localized police forces.
Okay.
That what they remember something. These are people who are all about policing. As long as the police force.
As long as they're policing me.
Right. As long as they're policing us. All right. And PM and preventing us from actually, trying to live a moral life and speaking out against some of the other injustices in this country, like abortion and gay marriage. So they're all in favor of cops. What they really are after, and tell me what you think about this, and please chime in the comment box. What they really are after is a national police force. Of course, with Bernie Sanders, AOC, the editors of Rolling Stone magazine, all the eggheads at the Harvard Law Review, the Cardozo Law Review. Of course, they're going to be the ones telling the cops which laws they can enforce and which ones they don't have to. Meaning, getting back to the persecution of Christianity. So if the LGBT rage mob runs through St. Patrick's Cathedral, throwing condoms at people and harassing people in the pews like they did in the 90s, so I'm not making that up, the National Police Force will say, no. You don't have to enforce. Those are people who are expressing themselves against the hateful fascism of the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, but let's say, for argument's sake, if an idiot like recently happened walks into a rabbi's home in Monsey, New York, and stabs the people that are, I guess, what they're celebrating Hanukkah, right? Celebrating Hanukkah, then that would be an enforceable crime. You see how they operate? They want to have a police force that they can manipulate. And my whole point in this is that localized police forces tend to be more conservative. They tend to be more, we'll take care of our problems. They operate on the principle of subsidiarity. We'll take care of our problems, whether it's the city of Newark, whether it's a small town in the Midwest, whether it's a county out in Arizona. We don't need you, federal government. We have our own police force. We enforce the laws both on the federal and the state level. Get out of our way. That's a threat to the left. They don't like that.
Well, also, just to get specific, there was a gentleman who ran in Seattle. His name is Sean Scott. He ran on the city council. He lost by 1,300 votes, just 1,300 votes in a major city in America. His platform, his major platform, which he ran under, was to abolish the police in Seattle. I don't want to live. I don't want to live in Seattle. I don't without police. I'm sorry.
But what I'm saying. But then, what did you read in the article? Because I really didn't see anything. What do they offer in its place? Now, I just gave you a theory that they want a nationalized police force. I don't know if that's what would they hope to have in its place. Who enforces the law?
Well, there's bad people in this world. Let's be honest. I mean, there's a reason why we have cops. Because there are people that if they can get away with something, they surely
They're going to. They're called criminals.
Absolutely. But even, to be honest with you, I hate to say it, even quote-unquote people who follow the law, they follow the law because they know there are consequences.
Right.
If you take away the consequences, people will come right into your house. Take a gun, they'll come in your house and rob you and leave.
Well, what would be to prevent them? Like how
that's
do you,
why you call the police. There's a consequence.
So again, that's why I say you got the Harvard Law Review, the Cardozo Law Review. You got these people who are supposedly this is the educated class, or these are the elites. We always talk about the elites. What do you propose in its place? Because guess what? If I'm walking down the street in New York City, Joe and I say all the time, we both work in New York City. If I'm walking down the street and 3 guys are coming in the other direction and they look threatening, I want a cop nearby. I need a cop nearby.
And I want the cop to be a big guy, and I want the cop to have a gun.
I've said it. I've said it. Yeah, he's got to carry a gun. This is not England. The cops have to carry a gun on their normal beat. And I said this to you before. Okay, the cop in The Godfather who smashes Michael Corleone's face, Officer McCluskey.
That's
okay. In The Godfather, you hate that guy. He broke Michael Corleone's face. Frig him, that Irish cop. You know, you can hear the Italians saying that, right? That's the cop you want right there if you're about to be mugged.
And if someone is in your basement, I don't want 100. Now, I'm gonna sound like Archie Bunker, but I don't care. I don't want a 130-pound female officer knocking on my door. I want a 230-pound Irish cop that has a scar across his eyebrow because when he was a kid, he used to drink a little bit too much and fight, who knows how to fight, who's big and has a gun. That's who I want to come through my door.
Because we're not big and we don't have guns.
That's who I want. I don't want 100. I see this sometimes. I go through the New York City. I go through the Penn State Port Authority, and I say to myself, I see some of these cops. Some of these, they're small. They're cops. You see, my vision of a cop is a big-ass guy who basically can take care of themselves.
You know the cops I love? I'll tell you the cops I love. Like, I try to be nice. You know, like I try to be respectful of the cops because I've argued with one too many cops in my life. Not a good idea. I don't recommend it, okay? So I try to be nice, right? I see them on the streets in New York. It's Christmas. It's New Year's. Merry Christmas, officer. Like, Happy New Year. And you always get that one cop who's about 3 times the size of me, okay? And I'm not a small guy, but I'm not a big guy, but he's 3 times the size of me. I say, Merry Christmas, officer. Yeah, Merry Christmas. You're like, I like that guy.
Oh, yeah.
I want that guy. When those 3 guys are coming down the street about to kick my ass and mug me, I want that guy standing right there.
That's who. That's
you're going to mug this guy? Like,
no way.
Get up against the wall.
That's who should be a cop.
That's right.
And that's the deal. And I like cops. And I want them in my cities because it's important. Let's go to AOC.
Let's give a quick shout out. Let's give a quick shout out. PM, thanks for the comments. You always keep the conversation lively, and we mean this from our hearts. Thank you. Suzanne is checking in from Colorado. Blessed Epiphany to you also, Suzanne. And yeah, so I just wanted to, and everybody else who's joining us right now. Frontline, Joe and Joe, 8 o'clock. Facebook Live on Sunday nights. And Joe is about to go to a place or to a person that I'm just going to.
We got to go to AOC.
Let me gird my loins.
This is our second segment from the looniness from the left during the week.
Started with Joe Biden. Well, no. Actually, it started. Well, that was just him being an idiot.
Just him being.
So we have Abolish the Police coming out of the Harvard Law and the Cardozo Law Review, and now we go to AOC.
Campaigning for Bernie Sanders in California said the United States is not an advanced society. That's interesting. She clearly hasn't traveled. There is no society as advanced as the United States. That is a fact. Okay, let me give you the exact quote. We're here to say that while we're living in right now, we're here to say what we're living in right now is not an advanced society. It's fascism. What we have, what we're evolving into as well. Just let me remind her what goes on in the United States. Consumer confidence remains high. The Dow Jones Industrial Average clips 28,000 points. That's 10,000-point rise since Donald Trump took the presidency. America's science and technology reigns supreme across the globe, and the United States by far is the economic leader across the globe. Now, if this is not an advanced society, I don't know what is.
Well, be clear, okay? Joe and I are very critical. That's why we're here, because we want to save our country, okay? We want to tell the truth about all the bad things that go on in this country, and there are a lot of them, okay? But the fact remains that, first of all, you have to ask yourself, does AOC, Father Lewis told me don't call her names. I won't call her names. Let's just say, does she know what a fascist is? Does she know what, let's say for argument's sake, because fascism actually is a worldview, okay? It's kind of laid out the same way communism, Marxism is kind of laid out, okay? Capitalism is laid out. So does she actually know what fascist economics are? Does she actually know what fascism, what makes a society fascist, number one? Number two, is she, I'm not calling her this, is she moronic when she says that we're not an advanced society? In other words, don't tell me she doesn't at least look at pictures, because I'm sure she has one of these and some of these other countries in the world, okay? No, they don't have an economic system that's as complex as ours is. They don't have, and again, all these things have problems. Our economy has problems. Academia has problems, but nonetheless, our universities, especially in science and technology, are ahead of the world, not behind. Why do you think China keeps stealing our technology?
All innovation comes out of the United States.
Okay, everything that the other countries live by were developed, or either discovered, invented, or developed to its perfection in the United States.
I think the angle she's going on is we're not progressive enough.
Well, what does she want? Here's my question. Here's my question. What does she want? AOC, you have gay marriage, at least for now. You have abortion, at least for now. You have a radicalized education community, public education system in this country that seeks to indoctrinate our children, at least for now. You have the upper hand in these things. Her problem, which again, in fairness to her, okay, I say that sometimes when it comes to income disparity, we've said this before on the show, doesn't make us socialists, all you right-wingers out there, okay? There is a lot of inequity in our system. But to say that we're not advanced, that by tweaking these things that we see as unjust, okay, and making them known that we can't fix these things while still maintaining our very complex economy that keeps chugging along every single day, AOC, you don't know what you're talking about. No human mind can comprehend what goes on in our economy on a daily basis. Only God's mind, because our economy is made up of tens of millions of individual choices that are made every single day. What do you mean we're not advanced? I don't get it. I don't get how she gets away with saying that.
Well, I don't understand how people could actually side with that. In all honesty, I simply don't get it. This woman's ideas, that they even have a platform, is actually frightening. That actually people think that this person is going to help the middle class or the working class. So let me explain something. Socialism destroys the middle class. It destroys the middle class. The elites separate and everyone else gets pushed down.
Right.
Go to Europe. Okay, we're going to pick Spain. Go to Madrid. Drive an hour and a half outside of Madrid and see what you have. It gets poor real fast. When you're over 50, you're lucky if you have teeth in your head. Mm-hmm. Go to Rome. Go outside of Rome for a half hour by train and look out the window. It gets poor real fast. Socialism is a failure. It has failed societies time and time again. Let's look at, I know everyone loves this one, but I'm going to use it anyway. Look at Venezuela. Venezuela was once a wealthy country. Venezuela has natural resources. Venezuela should be a wealthy country. Right now in Venezuela, people are eating their pets because they can't eat. There's massive starvation. I heard the average Venezuelan has lost 30 pounds.
But
and that's not on a diet.
Right, right. You know as well as I do What they're very good at, Bernie Sanders, AOC, MSNBC, CNN, and all the socialists out there, okay, what they're very good at is trying to pin the blame, let's say in the case of Venezuela, on something else. Certainly blame Donald Trump or blame America in general, like it's our fault. Let me tell you something. I know it's only anecdotal evidence, okay, but in my family, okay, members of my family that I never had really any communication with, my grandfather, okay, my father's father left southern Italy and came to New Jersey, came to Newark, New Jersey, and worked and everything, and put his roots down here. His brother, my Uncle Vincent, I never met my Uncle Vincent, it was my father's uncle, went to Caracas, all right? And he went to Caracas and he worked, because remember, labor is the source of all wealth, so Uncle Vincent didn't go down there to exploit people, AOC. He worked hard, started a textile business, made millions in the textile business. Why? Because there's a lot of oil in Venezuela, which affects the textile industry. And all these industries were created. And you had a vibrant, dynamic economy, free market economy in Venezuela until somebody came along, probably AOC's relative of some kind, who's from down there in Venezuela, and said, these people are making too much money. We're going to impose socialism. And that's what they did. And like Joe said, now they're eating their cats. And my family, by the way, Uncle Vincent, God rest his soul, is dead. My family, from the extent, they all left. They all left. They're either back in Italy or they're in the United States and Florida. They all left. There's nothing there anymore because it's been gutted, AOC, by people like you who Joe and I have a problem with people making, let's say, an ungodly amount of money and the inequities in our system. But you, Miss Ocasio-Cortez, you have a problem with anybody making money through the sweat of their own brow. You can't stand the fact that somebody works harder than somebody else and earns more money. You can't stand it. That's why you're a socialist. That's why you're a socialist. You have no idea what you're talking about, calling America a fascist system. You have no idea what you're talking about, saying that we're not an advanced society. Like Joe said by bringing up Venezuela. Is Venezuela an advanced society? You tell us.
Let's go to our third crazy left statement this week. It comes from our friend.
You should stop saying crazy left. It's a redundancy. You either say crazy or you say left. In the meantime, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe, Sunday nights, 8 o'clock on Facebook Live. As always, Bob Brutzicasi joining us. Hey, Bob, welcome back. Suzanne, everybody else, thanks for coming by. Jonathan Ross up in Toronto, Holy Faith Media, who will live stream this either later tonight or tomorrow on Holy Faith Media on YouTube. So more loony leftiness.
We're going to go to Joe Scarborough. As Joe mentioned, there was some problems. There was some horrible events in the Jewish community in New York during the holidays. They were absolutely anti-Semitic, and they were attacks, and frankly, it was horrible. So this is what Joe Scarborough said. He wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post. He basically said that he drew lessons, saying that basically, let me read. In which he drew lessons from Hitler's rise in Nazi Germany to urge voters, this is great, he makes up a word here, not to re-elect the illiberal Donald Trump. So he's basically saying that the violent anti-Semitic acts were Donald Trump's fault.
Right.
Interesting.
Real interesting.
And also, Linda Ronstadt had to add her 2 cents. She basically said, Trump is like Hitler and the Mexicans are the new Jews.
Right. That means, Ms. Ronstadt, that Donald Trump is killing Mexicans, that he's killing them, that he's ordering the government to kill Mexicans. Because, see, Nazis, if you knew your history, see, they killed Jews. They didn't just put them in camps. They put them in the camps in order to kill them, to round them up and to exterminate them. Okay? So your comparison is way off. Number one. Number two, I want to make a larger point about this. Okay? 2020 is here, and those of you who are inclined to voting for Donald Trump, go to the gym, start drinking protein shakes, thicken your skin, because they will call you exactly what Joe Scarborough just called you. He's calling you an enabler of a man who hates Jews. Now, leaving aside, he moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, no matter what you think about that.
That his daughter became Jewish.
Right.
When she married her husband.
Right. So we only say these things as evidence of Donald Trump not being anti-Semitic, okay? his foreign policy in the Middle East seems to be
Pretty pro.
pretty pro-Israel.
I think he's pretty
Okay.
pro-Israel.
Again, we're not arguing for or against that policy. What we're arguing is that calling Donald Trump an anti-Semite
is insane.
Okay. So with Joe Scarborough, again, why do we allow these some people to call these people intelligent when they make obviously unintelligent statements? If Donald Trump is illiberal and that makes us illiberal for voting for him, then you are unintelligent, Mr. Scarborough.
And one could even infer if you're illiberal, you're a Nazi.
Right.
From that statement.
But I need to see, as an American citizen, I need to see like this whole thing about before John McCain died, he was rocking in during the State of the Union speech, and he was saying Mussolini, Hitler, Franco, Mao. That somebody was saying that he was doing that because as he was listening to Donald Trump's speech, he was likening Donald Trump to all those people. If John McCain, God rest his soul, was alive, okay, or some of these others, please explain to me in non-hysterical terms. Explain to me and Joe how Donald Trump is illiberal. He wants conservative justices. You'll call that illiberal because you say it's liberal to support a woman's right to choose. I would say Donald Trump is a classic liberal because he protects the right to life. So that's why he's nominating conservative Supreme Court justices, because he separates children from their families at the border when their parents have committed a crime. DYFS does that every day. Now, DYFS and the DHS and all these state children's agencies, they're all liberals. All of them. Very few Republicans or conservatives in the social services systems in all these states. They separate children from their parents every single day of the week. My wife and I know it intimately because we're about to foster children and hopefully adopt a couple of them. And Eddie, who's watching right now, sent me and Joe an article about something we should read about this very topic, about I forgot the name of the act, AFSA, and he wants us to talk about it, something that Clinton signed into law in 1998 that does these very same things, separate children from families. So my point, Joe, in bringing this up is, what's Donald Trump doing that's illiberal? He's imposed tariffs, which has helped the American middle class. Okay, or leaving like say economic policy aside, what is he doing that is taking away the rights of American citizens, consolidating power in the executive branch of the government? What is he doing? What evidence do you have to show that he's a fascist or he's illiberal? And I only bring this up to say,
what is illiberal?
I don't know what illiberal is. Against you, Joe Scarborough? Yeah, but I'm against you too. So if you want to call me non-liberal or illiberal, I don't agree with your definition of liberalism.
And here's another thing. Calling the Mexicans the new Jews and Donald Trump the new Hitler is insane. And I'm going to tell you why. What has the Democratic Party done for the Mexicans coming over the border, other than enslave them, other than not pay them, and then ask for their vote? Let's be real. What has Nancy Pelosi done for someone who has come over illegally, other than ask them to wash her car?
Or pick grapes.
You see, all they want is your vote. This is a perfect issue of how dysfunctional our government is. And Donald Trump is not an ideologue. If they came to the table in good faith, we could negotiate an immigration agreement.
Of course you can. Of course you can.
This is not an ideological issue. It's not abortion. This could be worked out.
Sure.
You don't want this to work out.
Right.
Because this is what you hold up against the Democrat to get the Latino vote. I mean, the Republican to get the Latino vote.
Right. You want to convince
them. You
them
don't want this to work out.
Right.
You are not willing to come to the table.
Which makes them un-American. They accuse Donald Trump of being this fascist, this totalitarian, which is un-American by implication, because we don't have tyrants, at least let's say officially, yeah, but we do have tyranny in this country. But it comes from the people who are constantly speaking out against tyranny, especially those in MSNBC and CNN and in academia. You are the totalitarians, our friends, okay? You are. but that's what they have to do. My point in bringing this up was that 2020 has started. If you're inclined to voting for Trump, or you outwardly say you're voting for Trump, prepare to be attacked. We covered it a month ago. Rob Reiner said, if you support Trump, you're a white supremacist. Okay. Anna Navarro, I think it was Anna Navarro. Lord, forgive me if I'm speaking out of turn. I think it was Anna Navarro said there's something wrong with black people who vote for Donald Trump because 30% of the black community is supporting Donald Trump. Joe said that the number might be higher. Okay. The Latino community, those who are here legally and work hard, they love Donald Trump. Okay. 45% of the women who last time voted for Donald Trump might be over 50% this time. They're trying to shame and bully us because impeachment's not working. They're candidates. Can we call them candidates, by the way?
Oh, please.
Please chime in on that.
I don't even know. I'll be honest with you. They have no ideas. No ideas. I don't know how you could possibly support Elizabeth Warren if you're in the middle class. Any middle class person that votes for Elizabeth Warren should have their head examined. Seriously.
Based on what she said.
Absolutely.
Based on what
policies. Pure policies.
Take you out of your health. Again, let's go back to the coal miner in the first segment. Go tell that guy, Miss Warren, Senator Warren, go tell, what was his name, Ricky Bobby or Uncle Giuseppe, who makes his living in the coal mine. Okay, go tell them they're going to lose their health insurance and go into a government plan and have their taxes raised on top of it. Go tell them that. They're going to say, you know what Uncle Giuseppe's going to say? He's say, frig you, I'm going to go vote for Donald Trump.
That's
I'm going to go vote for Donald Trump.
I like that.
I know voted for you.
But also, and then not for nothing, Joe Biden is just a stone cold liar. And frankly, I don't think he's competent. So you have an inexperienced man in Mayor Pete who couldn't even really run a city, which is Terre Haute, Indiana. You have a radical South Bend. Sorry about that. Terre Haute, my friend Anthony Basil. You got a radical from Vermont. You have, frankly, an old man in Joe Biden that's been in the government for 50 years who's got to go. You got Elizabeth Warren, who's another radical, who's just a better liar than Bernie Sanders. And that's your choices. I don't know how, I'll be truthful with you, even if you, and listen, even if you don't like Donald Trump, he's the only choice.
He is.
He's the only choice.
And I always say, based on what you said, this guy is a practical politician. He has not.
And he's not an ideologue.
And here's another thing, too. If they want to say on judges he's an ideologue, I would say, you want to know what? Fine, because that's an area that we can't negotiate. Because you're not expected, Senator Warren, to vote for Neil Gorsuch or Brett Kavanaugh. Nobody's forcing your hand. Barack Obama put up Sotomayor and Kagan. They both got confirmed, okay, with Republican support. That's your right to do it when you have power, okay? And you can't, nobody could pretend that they were going to persuade Barack Obama to nominate a moderate or, heaven forbid, a pro-life justice. We knew it wasn't going to happen. We accept that. So don't get mad that a Republican, conservative Republican like Donald Trump says, no, I'm pro-life and I'm going to put up judges who respect the Constitution and respect the right to life. You have to deal with that. You have to deal with that. If you want to call him ideological, you have to look in the mirror and call yourself ideological too. On all these other issues, as Joe and I have said ad nauseum on this show, on the border, on the economy, on tariffs, on foreign policy, on all of it, this is a practical politician. Well, he's a practical leader, okay? He's not a politician, but he is a practical leader and you could work with him. But because you're so an ideological goose step, I'm calling you Nazis now. You're an ideological goose step with the pro-death movement in this country and all the liberal activist judges in this country and the SPLC and the ADL and the ACLU. That's why you hate Donald Trump. But you know damn well in your heart of hearts, you could do great things for this country if you would work with this guy. You just won't do it. You are a liberal.
And also, which makes you un-American.
Right.
Which makes you un-American. You're not for the country. You're for your agenda.
That's right. And
you're not for America. You're for you. This impeachment's a joke.
The whole thing is a joke.
It's frigging insulting. Excuse me.
No, the whole thing is
insulting.
It's all listen, it's a house of cards that's crumbling down around them. We weren't going to get into impeachment, but just in a nutshell, okay? Just you could see I said this to you earlier before the show. I don't know what their end game is. I don't know how they could possibly, under the law, delegitimize Donald Trump. They can't. The impeachment hasn't even gone through. Officially, it's not an impeachment until the articles of impeachment are sent to the Senate. Nancy Pelosi hasn't done that, so they can't even officially say he's been impeached, but they're liars. So they'll say, oh, but the House voted. Okay, well, go take a civics class and understand until it goes to the Senate, it's not an impeachment.
And they're never going to send it.
They're never going to send it because they know that on these issues, on judges and things like impeachment, and important things as far as the proper functioning of our government, Mitch McConnell has done a phenomenal job. And I have not been the biggest fan of Mitch McConnell in his history in the Senate. He has done a phenomenal job. This thing is dead on arrival. So what are they trying to do? They're just trying to, at least in the consciousness, at least in the PR war, trying to delegitimize him. It ain't going to happen. You simply have to put up a better candidate with ideas, and you know you're not going to beat him. You know you're not going to beat him for reasons that Joe and I talk about every week on the show, whether it's the coal miner in the Midwest or the blue-collar guy out in the Midwest, no matter where it is, whether it's the hardworking Latino that says, I don't hate Donald Trump. I'm sorry. I don't hate Donald Trump. He's done nothing to me. The African Americans who now have jobs where there was no jobs because Barack Obama said there wasn't going to be any jobs coming back. That you can't wave a magic wand and bring the jobs back. Those people are voting for Donald Trump because you offer nothing. But hey, you are the haters. You are fomenting hate in this country. Joe Scarborough, we started off with Joe Scarborough. Joe Scarborough, you are the one fomenting hatred because you're calling us names because we think Donald Trump's ideas are better than those that are coming out of the Democratic Party.
The next segment's very similar to it.
Let's give a quick shout out. You're at the front line with Joe, and both our veins are popping out of our head now because every time we start with Biden, we chuckle. We go to AOC, we chuckle a little bit more. And then we get into the meat and potatoes where the insults start flying, and then the vein will pop out of your head, as like my mother would say. Anyway, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo, Joe Rossinello. A couple quick shout outs. Karen joined. Hi from Toronto. Hi, Karen. Thanks for joining the front line with Joe and Joe. My baby joined. Catherine Sue joined. Hi, Catherine Sue. And Lawrence is joining in along with everybody else we mentioned earlier. So,
well, Joe Scarborough wasn't the only one who blamed Donald Trump for the violence on the synagogue.
Ooh, there's a shock.
Andrew Cuomo also did.
Oh, that's even more of a shock.
But Andrew Cuomo, obviously, we've talked about him on the show. He's the governor of New York. He basically also attacked. He made some comments on MSNBC. Shocking. Let me read this to you. I want to read you a blurb, and I find it interesting, and I think it's striking to what you were just saying. He basically said, what can anyone make of Donald Trump's tweets? They say more about the sender than anything else. New York, he believes, is a democratic state, and this is how he plays his partisan base, by demonizing Democrats. Democrats are evil. Democrats are bad. Democrats have lost their mind. They're anti-American. You foment that hate, and then you're shocked when you see these episodes of hate all across the country. That has now become the dialogue and the currency of this nation, and it's in politics. But when it resonates out of the politics into society, and now you see people who are acting out on those hateful acts, and people are impressionable, and some people are lost, and some people are vessels, and some people are ill. And they hear it and they respond. You see, this is what makes me laugh. When you attack a Republican like a vicious dog, it's fine. But when Donald Trump gets up and faces off with you and throws haymakers and lands many of them, you scream.
See, he doesn't just throw them, he lands them.
He lands them. And they don't want this. You see, because Donald Trump fights back, they don't like it. And here's another thing. Not only does he fight back, he's winning. They don't like it. They want you to roll over. And that's sort of what this show is about. We're not rolling over. You're going to hear it tough.
And he, by the way, he brought it out.
You're going to hear it because the truth is the truth.
That's right.
And here's the deal. Donald Trump, it's not Donald Trump's fault that someone got killed inside like a synagogue. oh my gosh, how could you even say that?
Right.
And I'm going to be honest with you. He has every right to defend himself. He has every right to fight back. And frankly, he fights back with equal force.
No, I think he fights back with a superior force. You want to know why? Because he tells the truth about them. And that's what they can't stand. They are insane. There is no other way to say it. When you've been told a million times this impeachment, just to brush on impeachment for a second, this impeachment thing's not going to work. Do you understand? We don't have the evidence. We can't prove it. We'd love to prove it. We'd love to prove it, but we can't prove it. And you have to prove it, okay? Because there's going to be a trial in the Senate. If you continue down that road, you are insane. That's what you are. And he points that out. When you continue, let's talk about this, Andrew Cuomo. What about when you told pro-life people or those people in New York State, if they were against gay marriage, that they need to get out of your state? What if a jamoke like me or Joe was walking down the street, and let's say somebody in New York recognized us from the front line with Joe and Joe, knowing that we're pro-life and against gay marriage, and punched me in my friggin' face and pummeled me beyond belief? Should you be held responsible? Because you told that person that people like me don't belong in New York State. So you, my friend, you're not holding yourself to the same standard. You fomented hate against people who fundamentally disagree with you and think, yes, you support baby murder, because that's what you do, and we are pro-life. They think a marriage is between a man and a woman to the exclusion of all other arrangements. You fomented hate against people like us and said we should get out of your state. So if somebody heard that and did what I just described to me or to Joe, God forbid, okay, what would you have to say about that? Would you condemn that violence?
It would be on page E6.
Right, it wouldn't be covered, and nobody would call you out on the hate that you incited. Yet you want to point that finger at Donald Trump because he goes after people like you.
And goes after you in a vicious way. Now, is everything he says on Twitter appropriate? Probably not. But I'm going to tell you what, Donald Trump's a fighter. He's going to fight you like a dog, and you should expect it. And frankly, I think any Republican nowadays, they're up against the machine. The media is part of the Democratic Party,
and they're still losing. And they're still. Why do you think they're? My father used to say, "What do you think makes their in Italian?" He would say, "Their standins roast a little bit." Okay, because they have everything on their side. Break it down. Break it down. Okay, they have the deep state. Okay, and yes, it exists. It's not a conspiracy theory. They have the deep state against them. You have the media against them. You have academia against them. You have Hollywood against them. You have the advertising industry against them. You have the legal establishment in the United States against them. You got corporate America, all the big corporations that lefties like Oliver Stone used to hate. Now they love them because they're all run by lefties. You have that all. You have the whole infrastructure to yourself. You're like kids in a candy store, and this guy's kicking your ass. And why? Because people like us said he's not a liar.
You know why?
We're gonna vote for him.
Because they want to abort children.
Really, yeah.
And that is a big driver why people will not vote for Donald Trump. And why is that? Because people use sex as a recreational activity, and if a child is the product of that activity, they want to get rid of it. You are controlled. And that's why many people on the surface listen to what Donald Trump says and believe it. From an economic perspective, even from a foreign policy perspective, on that issue, no way. And that controls why they pull the lever.
Right.
Because this is not the Democratic Party of your grandparents. These are radical people who are anti-American. They don't love this country as it was founded.
No.
They don't love this country. And I'm not talking about, well, all you want are white old men to run. No, absolutely not. This is not the Democratic Party of your grandfather. These are radical people, right? Radical people who shouldn't even, if you ask me, have a platform. Bernie Sanders should be, there's a reason why he left New York to go to Vermont, which is a fringe state. And somehow he has a platform. He raised $34 million in the fourth quarter.
People love what he. People,
How?
Because his base is socialist.
How?
Well, remember too, Joe made a good point about not being your grandfather's Democratic Party. There's some hope. I know this is shocking to you all. There's some hope in the Democratic Party. I think his name is Dan Lipinski from Illinois, and another colleague of his from Minnesota just signed on with 160 House members, Republican House members, and 39 Republican senators for the Supreme Court, in a letter to the Supreme Court, to petition the Supreme Court to revisit Roe versus Wade, because the right to an abortion is unworkable. Now, we are going to have this conversation, not tonight, okay? But nonetheless, Dan Lipinski is a member of a group called Democrats for Life. The woman running against him, or the campaign manager of the woman running against him, who's going to primary him for his congressional seat in Illinois, had this to say about Dan Lipinski: un-effing acceptable. And he didn't use the word effing, okay, in response to Mr. Lipinski and any other pro-life Democrat. See, he's saying what Joe has said, all right, for a very long time when he talks about Tom Perez, when we just referenced Andrew Cuomo. If you're pro-life, you are not in the Democratic Party. Our advice to the Republican Party is that there are many Democrats out there like Mr. Lipinski, you country club Republicans, you. Stop favoring business over labor. Start coming to the table and looking at the two who need one another. Capital needs labor and labor needs capital. Stop driving a wedge between labor and capital and try to bring them together. And you know what you'll do? You'll have political power for the next 300 years.
I invite you to look up Governor Casey's speech at Notre Dame. He was a Democrat. He spoke at Notre Dame, and he basically said when the Democratic Party signed on to the pro-choice platform, it abandoned its values. This was a Democrat. The Democratic Party is not, and this was in like the early, I believe, 90s that he made that speech. I believe. Don't quote me on it, but look up that speech. The Democratic Party is not pro-labor. The Democratic Party is pro-academia. It's pro-elite. It's postgraduates, what I like to say, drinking $7 coffees in big cities in America. Everywhere else, regular working people have nothing to do with what they espouse. They have no commonality.
Well, and if any of those coffee drinkers that you're describing, you think that they know what Ricky Bobby and Uncle Giuseppe go through going in the coal mine? Do you? Do you think they've ever been to West Virginia or Kentucky?
Do you think that they're talking to the guy who works at a John Deere plant in western Minnesota, who gets his coffee at 7-Eleven at 4 a.m., that he wants his daughter to go to the bathroom next to a transvestite who's 18 and she's 11?
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable what is going on. And it's unbelievable that people pull the lever. I can't even believe it.
Well, like you said,
I can't even believe it. I'm serious. I can't even believe it.
Right.
This is where we've come as far as America. Is Donald Trump perfect?
Absolutely
not. Is Donald Trump someone I'd even like hang out with? Probably not. Would Donald Trump even like me? Probably not. Is Donald Trump the Messiah? Surely he isn't. But he's the best we got right now.
And that is not a negative statement, because he's doing a pretty damn good job.
He's had success as the president.
He's had success as a president, and I've never been more satisfied as a voter in voting for any politician as I've been for Donald Trump. That on economics, he doesn't bow to the altar of the free market. He respects labor, okay? He respects America and wants to take care of American citizens first.
And what's wrong
and not
with that?
Sell us out to global elites. Now, there might be a problem, excuse me, all right, with this recent airstrike in in Iraq, and they took out this Iranian general, okay? But at the end of the day, I'm going to take him at his word, and we're not here to argue that point tonight, but I'm going to take him at his word that he does not want to get us into any more endless foreign wars either. And this was a preemptive action to try to prevent that from happening. I'm going to take him at his word.
And we're not a doormat. You see, when a bully comes to your house, you're not going to negotiate with him. You have to face a bully in life. We're not doormats. We're not going to draw invisible lines in the sand and pretend like I double dog dare you. Some people, all they understand is a big stick in life. I hate to tell you that, my friends. This is the real world. That's why we have cops with guns.
Right.
That's why. Because that's what some people, that's all they understand is a gun staring them in their face and say, don't do that. Because if you do, I'm not playing around.
That's right.
We are not doormats. America is closed when it comes to that.
Hasn't, real quick though, hasn't, just to put a finer point on it, what Joe just said is verifiable. See, we don't just say things without at least offering some evidence to support that argument. What Joe just said is so true. We've been doormats for 20 years because, just in one example, because of NAFTA, which Joe Biden supported, okay? Donald Trump reworked that deal. The AFL-CIO, we reported on it 2 weeks ago. Trumpka, who was a big Obama supporter, supporting the New Deal that Donald Trump, the USMCA, okay, and replaced NAFTA. Donald Trump has followed through. He says, yeah, we'll trade with you, Mexico and Canada, but American workers come first. American workers. Donald Trump's not the president of Mexico or of Canada. He's the president of the United States. So you know what he did? He put America first. Not getting us, hopefully this Iranian action proves to be what he thinks, okay, strategically. Yeah, no more foreign wars. No more endless foreign wars. We take care of America first.
But people are not going to attack the American embassy.
Well, that's, yes. That's,
period.
Yeah, you can't
and
do
you
that.
will never, ever, ever do that. And period. And we don't let people die to win an election either.
Mrs. Clinton.
Mr. Benghazi, Barack Obama. That was a disgrace. Immediately, he sent in troops to protect the embassy because it's American territory. You do not permit that ever, ever. I'm not for war, but I am for protecting. And that's not to be tolerated. And America is not a doormat, and it never will be. But let's go to one more point. And I think this is a shout out to all the Democrats out there who are supporting, who frankly are Democrats at heart and who are thinking about voting Democratic. I think this is a strong indicator. And this is something that you should bring to your representatives. Because I actually think, I've said this on this show, Tom Perez, who's the head of the DNC, has to go. He has to go.
If they want to win anyway.
They have lost their marbles in terms of policies. This is what came out of the U.S. Census Bureau this week. For the first time in history, California is losing a congressional seat. What does that mean? It loses one electoral vote, the first time in history. Also, this came out of the Brookings Institute. Red or red-leaning states like Texas and Florida are set to gain 2 to 3 congressional seats this year. Meanwhile, Trump-supporting states such as Arizona, Montana, and North Carolina are expected to gain at least 1 congressional seat. You see, this is an indicator. Your policies aren't working. California, the first time in history, this is California. You're losing a congressional seat. America is not embracing your ideas. You are going to lose this election because your ideas are bad.
Yeah, it's not even just
your ideas are bad
and unworkable. So even if you implement them for a time, they're unworkable. Just like Obamacare was unworkable. You can't do it.
It was meant to be unworkable. That was the biggest scam going.
Right, that was a scam. That was to try to
get everyone into a governmental plan. By the way, your health care will stink when that happens.
Right.
Go to Europe. Go to Canada.
Go to Canada.
And ask people. Everyone who has money gets a supplemental plan. And guess what? Because they're taxing you so heavily, you can't afford one.
Right.
So the rich get to have good health care, and the middle class and the lower class, their teeth fall out of their head.
Right. So what's new? Joe and I want to make it clear before we go tonight, just so we understand, okay? This country's got problems. That's why social media is exploding with a lot of the problems that we have, okay? And we try in our own way, in our own, from our Catholic worldview, to talk about these problems, all right? But here's the thing. You can't negotiate. See, the right has, let's say, for argument's sake, this fixation on markets and all this. It's almost like it becomes idolatrous. I've said that before. No, it's like they bow at the altar of the free market. All right, we as free marketeers say that's not a good idea. We really shouldn't do that. But when we look at the left, and my point is, you could talk to somebody like that. In other words, respecting the right to private property, respecting the right for you to make your own decisions for your business, but within maybe a little bit more of a moral, that's a bad word,
that is
framework, okay? But there could be a conversation there. Donald Trump, I think, is having that conversation because evidently you don't hear shrill voices on the right wing getting all bent out of shape when the tariffs are imposed, okay, a reworking of the deal with the United States, Canada, and Mexico, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average is still at 28,000. So evidently Donald Trump, through his actions, is trying to show some of those on the free marketeer libertarian right. No, these are workable things if you do them properly, okay? But here's my larger point with the left, okay? There's no conversation to be had. You're asking me to compromise with an insane idea, like teaching 5-year-olds that there's no such things as boys or girls, or
to say that you can't use gasoline.
Right. Like, you're not going to be allowed to heat your home. Okay, but let's talk about this. No, we're not going to talk about it because the world's going to end in 10 years. So what's more important, the survival of the human race, or you being able to heat your home in the winter? I don't know. I don't think the world's ending, but all I know is I'm not freezing my butt off in 20-degree weather in North Jersey.
You don't want police in cities.
Right, you don't want police in cities.
What are you, crazy?
These people, I hate to use the word, but I'm going to use it because it's so appropriate. These people truly are unhinged. They are absolutely unhinged. That they think that any of these ideas, $93 trillion in a Green New Deal, do you really believe that that's workable? Do you?
Like I said, unless you are super rich and in a pot, or frankly, you're not paying attention, any person in the middle class that does not support Donald Trump, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you, because you will not be in the same place, economically speaking, under any one of those candidates. That is a fact. The second that they raise the corporate tax from low 20s to 35%, the unemployment number will rise, people will be underemployed, the economy will slow down, and the people who will keep their job are the elites.
And the taxes will go up on everybody who does have a job.
That is a fact. That is a fact.
Right.
If you don't believe me,
go look at
watch
history. Go look at
as
history.
it happens.
Right.
You could hate him all you want, but this is a fact. He is the only choice for America right now. And if you want to beat him, stop hating him, come up with some ideas.
And come to the table.
And let's talk.
You could fix the border. You could fix so many things if you people on the Democratic side, if you would just come to the table and talk to this guy. Abortion be damned. If you lose that fight, you lose it.
Put your $7 coffee down.
Right.
Paying $5,000 a month in your apartment in New York City, and come into the real world. Go to 7-Eleven, talk to people who work, talk to people who are struggling to raise kids, because that's who runs the country. That's who puts people in the seat. And your ideas are not working with them. And that indicator says it.
That's right.
It says it.
Good. I love to see them lose power. And that's yeah. And just to put a finer point on, that's always the idea. The reason why these people won't come to the table, because coming to the table and negotiating real solutions to our problems, practical political solutions to some of our problems, is something that's going to benefit everybody. But when you're talking about a group of elitists, yes, I am singling out the left, a group of elitists drinking that $7 coffee that Joe's talking about, they don't drink Doers, they drink Balvenie, okay? They don't drink Absolute, they drink Grey Goose, okay? Those people are not interested in making things better for all Americans. They're interested in keeping the status quo because they benefit from it, and you and your well-being and your family's well-being be damned. Well, guess what? to Andrew Cuomo, to Joe Scarborough, to Rob Reiner, to AOC, to Bernie Sanders, to Joe Biden. Joe and Joe on Election Day this year are going to proudly, yes, proudly go vote for Donald J. Trump. Period. Exclamation point.
Good conversation.
I think so. So anyway, thanks for joining us here at the Frontline. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello. We are here Sunday nights, 8 o'clock on Facebook Live. Just wanted to give a shout out to a couple of people who I missed. Bill joined in, our friend from up there in Canada. No doctors in my Canadian town for my family of 6, but medicine is free if you could get it. If you get it. No doctors up there, huh, Bill? And anyway, I think a couple other people who I missed. As I mentioned, Bill, Dave chimed in and joined us. Thanks for stopping by, Dave, and Melissa, and everybody else in PM, and Eddie, and Sue, and Bob. Everybody, thanks for joining us here at the Frontline. Again, special thanks to Jonathan Ross up at Holy Faith Media up in Toronto. Our show will be broadcast on YouTube. We're getting a lot of action on both sides, both Facebook and YouTube. Some really good interviews coming up in the very near future. We are proudly going to be, as Joe mentioned, we're going to be on the Crusade channel out of New Orleans. That's Mike Church's
on the 21st.
On the 21st. We encourage all you people to subscribe to the Crusade channel because Mike's awesome. The people he has on his lineup are awesome. We like to think we're kind of awesome. And we're going to be filling in on the Barrett Brief on the 21st and perhaps the 30th also, so we'll see. But either way, things are rocking and rolling here, and we have you to thank for it and Almighty God himself. So thanks for coming by, and remember, as always, our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation that's going on everywhere. See you next time.
Thanks for listening, all.